The sand was red. You'd seen it before, but it surprised you every time, because they cleaned it every morning. Every single morning. Men came with rakes, cleared it, spread fresh sand. White. Almost white. Then by afternoon, it turned red. Same every day. Same for years. Today was the same. The gate hadn't opened yet, but you could hear it. Out there, tens of thousands of people, screaming. You couldn't tell what they were screaming for. Not one at a time. All at once. It wasn't a sound. It was a weight. It sat on your chest. You looked at your hands. Your right hand wasn't shaking. That was good. Or bad. You didn't know anymore. 5 years ago, you were in Capua, right in the middle of the Campanian Plain, a city built on volcanic soil. The morning sun hadn't risen yet. It was cold. April cold. The smell of wet stone was everywhere. The training ground was mud, and in the mornings, that mud froze. It crunched under your feet. When the lanista first saw you, he didn't look at your face. He looked at your hands, then your shoulders, then your hands again. Thraex or Myrmillo, he said. He wasn't asking you. He was thinking out loud. You became a Thraex. Small shield, curved blade, mobile, fast. Not for men who suffocated inside heavy armor. It was right for you. The first week they just ran you. Before dawn. Not like dogs. Quietly. Because silence meant speed there. The ones who yelled wore out early. You understood that once you stopped yelling. The second week you started training with a wooden sword. It was carved from timber. It looked almost comical, but not there. Because every time that wood hit you, and you felt something break. Not your fingers. Something else. Somewhere inside. The food was good. That had surprised you. Barley porridge. Every day. Beans on the side. Cheese sometimes. Meat once a week. The lanista fed you well because a weak gladiator didn't earn money. Simple math. You were an investment. You knew that. You didn't lie to yourself. But the food was still good. When they transferred you to Ludus Magnus, you stepped into a different world. You were in Rome now, right next to the Colosseum. The first time you saw the underground tunnels, you understood what this place really was. This wasn't just a flat arena. It ran like a machine. Everything had a mechanism. Elevators, traps, cages. The animals were down below and the smell drifted up. A sharp smell. Urine, blood, and feed, all mixed together. You never forgot that smell. Your first fight was in September, the Harvest Games, Ludi Romani. The editor that year was a wealthy man. His name stuck with you, Marcus Attilius Rufus. Not a senator, but rich enough to sit with senators. The games ran 4 days. You were on the third day. Your opponent was from Samnium. A big man. He had at least 15 pounds on you, but his feet were slow. You figured that out within 10 minutes. 10 minutes is a long time, but after 10 minutes, you knew. You threw your attack from his left side. Didn't connect. Didn't need to. He needed to dodge. He did. He turned his right foot, shifted his weight left. That moment was enough. When he went down, the crowd roared something. The editor raised his finger. Up. You would live. You didn't look at the crowd. You couldn't. And your legs were shaking and nobody could see that. You didn't know if they caught it from behind. But as you walked back through the gate, you focused on keeping your feet steady. You managed. You think. The next 3 years passed in a blur. 8 fights. You didn't remember all of them. Some you did. Some you didn't. You didn't know which ones were more dangerous. The ones you couldn't remember. Maybe those were worse. Something had changed inside you. You couldn't say when, but one day you noticed. When you looked at your opponent, you didn't see a person anymore. You saw a problem. Something to be solved. That scared you at first. Then it didn't. Then it scared you again. That third phase was still going. There was a man beside you, Isidorus, Egyptian. He fought with heavy weapons, a secutor, slow but nearly unbreakable. 8 years in the arena. 8 years. He almost never talked to you, but at dinner he always sat across from you. One night he looked at you. Looked for a long time. He didn't say, "The arena changes you." There was no need for words. His eyes said it. And that look said something else too. This change is inevitable. Resisting it was wasted energy. Isidorus fought 3 months later. Won. Fought again. Won again. Then, one morning, he wasn't at the training ground. Nobody asked. Nobody knew. Or everybody knew, and nobody asked. It was the same thing. Today was your 5th year. A full 5 years. According to the Lannista's count, you should have paid off most of your debt by now. You didn't know exactly how much was left. They never told you that number. They never told anyone. Because if you knew the number, the countdown started. And a countdown meant hope. And hope was dangerous. Hopeful gladiators rushed. Gladiators who rushed died early. You'd woken up early that morning, sat at the edge of the doorway, knees pulled in, back against the wall. The stone was cold. It was always cold. The stones of the Flavian Amphitheater didn't hold the sun. You were deep inside. The sun couldn't reach this far down. Sounds drifted in from outside. Vendors. Even in the early morning, vendors were out there. Sausage, hot bread, wine. On game days, the crowds came. And the crowds brought more crowds. It was an economy. An army of merchants. While you fought in the arena, a completely different war was going on outside. A war of money. Today's games were sponsored by a senator, Gnaeus Pompeius Gallus. His name was floating around everywhere. He wanted to be elected. Not consul, something smaller. But these games were a major investment for him. 10 bouts, 2 beast hunts, and a gladiator procession in the evening. You were a line item in his ledger. You must have been an interesting figure. 5 years, 8 fights, never lost. Those were good numbers. The crowd knew your name. It was circulating. That suited this senator candidate just fine. If you won today, the crowd would remember him. If you lost today, the crowd would still remember him. Either way, worked for him. That's what politics was. Once the armor went on, you felt different. It always happened this way. Strange thing. When the metal settled on your shoulders, something closed up inside you. The things that leaked out found the door, and the door shut. The fear didn't go away, but it knew its place now. It stood in a corner. The helmet went on, pressed tight against your skull. The sound inside your head changed in that moment. It went deeper. You could hear your own breathing. It echoed inside the metal. Every breath a reverberation. You took the sword. The Sika. Curved. Short. The Thraex's weapon. You'd lived with this blade for 5 years. You knew the grip. It sat perfectly in your fingers. Your fellow gladiators waited in a line. Silently. Nobody spoke. There was nothing to say. As you walked the corridor, the ground shifted. The stone gave way to sand. Sand under your feet. Fine at first, then thicker. The light grew, and then the gate. That gate, the famous gate of the Colosseum. Iron grating. Heavy. The dust on top hadn't been wiped away in years. Fingerprints on the iron. Thousands of fingerprints. You didn't think about how many people had passed through it. You couldn't. The gate opened. The sound crushed you. There's no other way to describe it. It crushed you. Fell over you like a wave. Tens of thousands of people. The Flavian Amphitheater held 50,000. Today, it was full. Probably more than full. Every tier packed. Senators on the lower level. Merchants above them. The common people above that. Women at the very top. All of them screaming. The sun was directly overhead now. Midday. and that sun broke apart on the sand. You squinted, looked at the ground. It wasn't red yet. Today's sand wasn't red. They'd cleaned it this morning. You knew what would happen by afternoon. You spotted your opponent, coming out from the other side. A Murmillo. Big fish-crested helmet, rectangular shield, straight gladius. Just slow but protected. Classic fighting style. Thraex versus Murmillo. The most common pairing in the arena. The crowd loved it. Speed against power. Movement against weight. Your opponent looked at the crowd, raised his hand. The crowd lost its mind. He must have been known here. He'd fought here before. He had fans. They were wearing colors, red and black. You didn't look at any of that. You looked at him. You watched how he walked. He was favoring his left foot, slightly. Maybe an old injury. Maybe habit. But there was an asymmetry, and asymmetries were doors. The editor stood, in the viewing box. Gnaeus Pompeius Gallus, white toga with a red border. He raised both hands. The crowd went quiet. Almost quiet. It was never completely silent, but enough. The tuba sounded. Long, deep, bronze. It hit the walls of the Colosseum. Bounced back. Hit again. The air shook. And you ran. You didn't remember the first 10 steps. You never did. The body just went. 5 years of memory. The muscles knew. The mind was slow. The muscles were fast. The first strike came from you. Didn't connect. You pivoted right. Fast. Sand under your feet. The sand felt different today. That thought crossed your mind. Right then. Stupid thought, but it crossed. The sand was different. Drier. Maybe they hadn't dampened it that morning. Or maybe they'd used a different batch. Small difference, but it mattered. Your turns were different. You'd have to account for it. Your opponent pushed forward, shield in front, gladius to his right, holding it straight. Classic Murmillo stance. Textbook. He was starting defensive, building his energy. You knew this. You knew he knew this too. And that's why the first exchange was a feint. Both of you circled slowly. On the sand. The sun was above both of you. The crowd murmured. Not because they were unmoved. They were waiting. Impatience looked different from this. This was a held breath. Tension. You moved left. Fast. Not thoughtlessly. Precisely calculated. Coming from his left would force him to rotate that left foot. And that slight asymmetry in his left foot would throw his balance for just a moment. A small moment. Maybe a quarter of a second. But that was all it ever took. He turned. The asymmetry was real. The left foot landed wrong. His weight shifted right. His shield pulled to the left. A gap opened. You launched the Sika. Didn't hit. Didn't need to. Throwing early was stupidity. But you saw that gap. And that gap stayed in your mind as a fixed point. And you pulled back. The crowd reacted. A rumble. Disappointment or satisfaction. Somewhere between. They wanted it, but not yet. They wanted the tension to hold. 3 minutes passed, maybe 4. The sand was hot now. The sun had poured itself down. The soles of your feet were burning. You were thirsty. That was normal. You were always thirsty. No water until the fight was over. Until it was over. After that thought came. In the past, it wouldn't have. But now it did. After that, 2 words. Nothing followed, but 2 words were enough. After that, there was something. The second strike came. From him this time. Unexpected. He was supposed to play defensive, but he attacked. Shield thrust forward, gladius raised. A show of force, a crushing move. What a Murmillo did when he trusted his strength. You stepped, not right. See left. Unexpected. The sand shifted. Just a little. But it shifted. Your left foot slipped. For a moment. One small moment. The weight loaded onto your right shoulder. And did your opponent notice? He did. You looked. You couldn't see his eyes behind the helmet, but you saw his head turn. He didn't take the opening. Why? He was experienced. He knew the trap. Looking weak from a position of strength was bait. He knew that. So he waited. He was smart. Smart opponents lasted longer. That was both good and bad. 10 minutes had passed. Maybe 15. The sun had shifted slightly. Your shadow had grown a little longer. The crowd was impatient now. The noise had risen. Some were shouting things. You couldn't make out what. They were shouting in Latin, but so many voices were layered on top of each other that the words dissolved. And then something changed. Your opponent slowed. He was tiring. Heavy armor tired you. It always did. The Thraex was light. You were light. Endurance was on your side. You knew this. This was a patience game, and you were patient. 5 years had taught you patience. His shield dropped a few inches. A small drop. Fatigue. Not intentional. The muscles had decided. They were tired, and you saw that fatigue. You saw that decision. You couldn't explain it. You never could. Not even later. But in that moment, when the shield dropped those few inches, everything slowed down. The roar of the crowd fell away. The heat on the sand seemed almost visible, a vibration in the air, and you moved, not left. Straight forward, unexpected. A Thraex doesn't go forward. A Thraex moves sideways. That was the rule. That was known. Your opponent knew it. So he wasn't ready. He raised his shield, but too late. The Sika found the gap, not the shoulder, the upper rim of the shield, the metal shield. The blow bounced back, into your arm. It went numb, but your opponent's shield slid. He stepped back, lost his balance, and you were already there. You struck, not the neck, not the head, the hand gripping the gladius behind the shield. He couldn't hold it. It fell into the sand, heavy and loud, metal and grit, and that sound rose above the crowd for exactly 1 second. Then the crowd exploded. You stood over him, breathing, fast, deep, your own breath inside the helmet, metal echo. You looked at the crowd, tens of thousands of faces, every one of them looking at you, 50,000 people staring at a single point. You were that point. The editor stood. Gnaeus Pompeius Gallus. White toga with a red border. His hands were empty. He looked at the crowd. The crowd roared, hands moving, thumbs, every direction. You waited. The editor studied the crowd. A long look. He was calculating. A political calculation. You were part of that calculation, and so was the man below you. But neither of you were people right now. You were figures. Inside a tableau. His hands went up. Thumbs up. He would live. The crowd accepted it. A rumble. Not pure joy, but enough satisfaction. Today, the blood was enough. Destruction wasn't always required. Sometimes the fight itself was enough. You pulled back. You didn't look at your opponent. Didn't try. Didn't keep him in your field of vision. You walked toward the gate. With every step, the sand compressed under your feet. It was still hot. When you entered the corridor, the sound dropped. Quickly, the walls cut it off. Stone. Thick Roman stone. Thousands of tons of stone and one corridor carved inside it. It was dim. You paused until your eyes adjusted. You looked at your hands. They were shaking. It always happened this way. Inside the arena, they didn't shake. Outside, they did. That's how the body worked. Something held it together in there. Outside, it let go. You looked at the stone of the wall. Rough. Travertine. Limestone. You'd once thought about who built these walls. How many hands? How many years? Vespasian had started it. Titus had finished it. 8 years, from 72 to 80. Tens of thousands of workers. Some were slaves. Some were free craftsmen. Some didn't know what they were. You didn't always know either. Evening came. The sun went down. The Colosseum fell into shadow. Sounds still drifted in from outside. The games were over, but the crowd wasn't leaving. The taverns were probably packed. People were talking, telling each other about today. Years from now, they'd still be telling it. I saw that fight, they'd say. I was there. You were there too. You sat in the corner of your cell, back against the stone, legs in front of you. The exhaustion was inside your body, inside your bones. That kind of exhaustion didn't go away with sleep. It went away with time. Sometimes even that wasn't enough. You looked at your hands. They weren't shaking anymore. You thought, 5 years. Not 8 fights, 9 now. All over. None lost. That was a good record. A good record in the Lanista's ledger. A good record in Gnaeus Pompeius Gallus's ledger. A good record in the crowd's ledger. What it was in your own ledger, you didn't know. But you noticed something. Your debt was shrinking. You didn't know by how much. But it was shrinking. And a thing that shrinks eventually reaches 0. That was simple math. Math didn't change in Rome. The rudes, the wooden sword, symbol of freedom. When the Lanista placed it in your hand, fighting would no longer be mandatory. You could fight if you wanted, for pay, but the obligation would be over. Some men returned to the arena after receiving it, for money, because they didn't know anything else. Because the outside was more dangerous than the inside. Outside, nobody fed you. Nobody trained you. Nobody told you who your opponent was. Outside, everything was your opponent. But outside, the sand was white. It didn't turn red in the morning. That thought came, unexpected. But true. Outside, nobody cleaned the sand each morning. There was no sand. There was dirt. There was stone. There was mud. But no sand. And nothing that turned red. That was enough. Maybe that was enough. Another night passed. And another. And every morning the sun rose. Over the Flavian Amphitheater. And every morning the crowds began to gather. And every day something happened in the arena. But that day, today, this fight, the sand was still red inside your head. And your opponent's eyes, the eyes behind the helmet. You hadn't seen them, but you'd imagined them. You always imagined them. After every fight. You imagined the eyes of the person across from you. How they looked. What they were thinking. Maybe he was thinking the same thing. Maybe he was sitting in a corridor right now, back against a stone wall, hands shaking, wound wrapped, imagining the eyes of the man across from him. That thought didn't bother you. It was the opposite. Somehow it was comforting. You weren't alone in this corridor. You were just alone. Those weren't the same thing. That's how the last night of the 5th year passed. On the morning of the 6th year, the sun rose from the same place. But something was different. You didn't know what, but you felt it. The air, the smell of the stone, your own breathing. You didn't know, but you felt it. And sometimes, feeling it is enough. That day, the arena was empty. No games. Silent. No crowd. No vendors. No sound of the tuba. Just the sand. And the sand was white. They'd cleaned it that morning. They cleaned it every morning. But today, there were no games. It wouldn't turn red. Today, the sand would stay white. When that thought hit you, something released inside your chest. Something small. A muscle. A knot. You didn't know what this feeling was. But it felt old. It felt natural. It felt real. Older than 5 years. Older than 10. Maybe as old as the first day. The day you were born. Knowing that a color could stay white. Just that. Nothing else. Just that. Constantinople didn't fall today. Rome didn't burn. No one was lost in the mud at Verdun, but you went somewhere, into the stone corridors of the Colosseum, down beneath the sand, into the eyes of a man, eyes you never saw. If you went there, if you came back, that's enough. In the next story, I don't know where you'll be, but another door will open, and you'll step through it again. That door is always here.